My name is Bruce Burgess, and I'm going to go over a proof of concept for an idea. Well, kind of I have, but it's not really a new idea. This has been floating out for a while, and there are models and things like they're already doing it, particularly through the cloud. And Google already has something on the device already out there for something like this, but this is just something I kind of came up with through taking my AI courses and things like that. And I figured I'll try to give it a whirl and see if I can't implement something like this on my own using some other sources. I'll try to explain it, but it's just basically going in a voice into an LLM and then using the LLM for what it's really good for, because LLMs are large language models, as they're called, have been trained on natural language processing, or NLPs, and I figured that if this would be something that to do to try to do a proof of concept for things to try to lay down maybe some frameworks, or lay down something for possible future app development and things like that without relying on Google or Apple APIs for their, like, for Apple's intelligence, for example, or Google's Gemini, for example. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. And as you can tell here, this is kind of just a very, very basic concept. I'm not going very deep into this, not trying to make things like this, but the idea is very simple. Is you'll have the user, which will be a person. They'll have their mobile device. They'll have the app on the phone, and the user will speak into the app, usually either a record button or some sort of interface like that. Probably going to be a record button, just because I want to make these work on older mid-range devices, which I currently have, like an iPhone 12 or a Samsung Galaxy S10, something that's more akin to the common demographic that we have around that majority of smartphone users. And I don't know if I could pull it off with that because of the hardware limitations. But if I can do that, it would be great and be used that. So the idea is that you would go in, you have a speech to text model, something that would take the speech from the user, and then it will take it and make it into text, and then we'll send the text to the LLM model, which then usually has a tokenizer or something in it, and then that tokens the text and sends it to the LLM for LLM to process, and does it do its statistical analysis on it, much like ChatGPT or other ones that you're probably familiar with. But this one might be a very slimmed down version of it because it'd be hosted on a device. I have to make things small, and then that response will be sent to a screen where the user can read it. It's just right now, it's just a proof of concept idea, so it's not going to be anything too fancy. There's going to be some serious challenges to get this to work on the device, and those challenges are and my limitation on my hardware might be the major blockers of it. But it's a challenge I'm looking forward to take up, and to see if I can do this or not. So I'm just throwing this out there. So here's my kind of like a proposed idea of how I'm going to approach this. So I'm thinking about using Flutter for the screening UI. And the reason why, like I said, note here, the reason why I am thinking about using Flutter is because the industry demands, not because it's the best way, because you're going to have like some embedded systems for the speech to text model and the LLM. And so for those embedded systems to really work would be really based on native code to do that. So basic, like iOS, and using Xcode and Swift, and then using like the models within that type of environment would probably be easier. But there's a big push for Flutter. I'm looking for a challenge to try to use Flutter in this type of model. There's going to be some glue logic. Obviously, I'm gonna have to try to glue these to it if I can get it. So the challenge is trying to quantize, make these models down, make this slim down to be able to work on the mobile device, and then try to pair it with Flutter for some to be able to change between them. So I'm gonna have to create two of these embedded systems models, basically, to one for the Android operating system or OS, and then the other for the iOS OS. The Android, from my base research, sounds like it's going to be easier to do than the iOS thing. However, the idea is I want to have parity. I want to be able to do this across both platforms, not just to do one or the other. And even though it's going to be hard enough to do it on one, but to have it both across Android and iOS is kind of my big thing, and completely on the device or basically embedded into an app as kind of like a foundational framework, like LLM, large language models are usually called foundational models. This is how I'm looking at it as a foundation, and I'm trying to work to see if I can't set that new foundation. And this is kind of my high level idea about that right now. And so we're going to get to the next point is, so what is the point? Why bother doing this at all? Well, first off, it's going to serve as a base layer for a new user interface to help build new apps. And I have like a half a dozen ideas to use this for, even with the limitations of devices and stuff that could work for this. But they will keep all that processing on the device, so there will be no cloud, no external servers. The only issue is we have to have a trust in the models. So we have to have the trust in particularly the LLM, that it's not sending the servers. But if I use open source models, which I'm hoping to do, then we'll be able to take a look at the model itself and see if there's any backdoor code or anything like that that's sending things to the server. But the idea is not to have something sent to a server for processing. Is that all this stuff is kind of stays on the device, which will help with man-in-the-middle attacks and not sharing unwanted data sharing. So if we're not sending things through the net or trying to rely on the cloud service or something, it's less likely that it could be hacked unless the device itself, like the phone, gets compromised, which can happen. But as far as as far as just sending it through a network and then someone pulling it from a network, that's one thing. And then it's also, we're not sending the data to big tech. So like with Apple Intelligence or even Google stuff. So like if you want to use Google's Nano Gemini or things like that, which are on board, especially with the newer phones, you're still going to need Google Play services in play, and a lot of that stuff is being sent to Google, and then Apple Intelligence will probably have a lot of stuff sent up to clouds for computation or being pulled in. So it keeps that there, and then it's also would work on de-Google Android phones like Graphene OS and some other things. So I know that there's a small community that's starting to grow of privacy-conscious individuals that want their smartphone to be private, and they will go with a de-Google phone and use other types of apps for that. And if I can get this to work, it would work on such devices. One of the limiting factors is, like I said, hardware and stuff. And the functions completely offline. It's be reliable even with poor or no signal. So you turn off that, and you can still be able to interface through the voice. That's another key benefit if I can get this to work. And it avoids relying on native speech to text on iOS and Android, which often requires cloud, like I was saying before. The STT stands for speech to text, by the way. And this will just means that, I'm trying to have it more on the device. And because it's more on the device, too, you still have to use like the CPU and the natural hardware. And so the older phones, they call it interference, which is not interference, but inference, which is how long it takes for the large language model or those models to process and give you data back. And on older hardware, it's going to take longer time than, let's say, the newer hardware, for sure. So there is going to be what seems some lag time, but it won't be network lag if it's on the device. It'll be more processor and the device specs that will limit that there. And I truly believe that the voice interfaces is going to be the next major user interface or user experience paradigm. And it's going to solve common user experience issues. Like if you have typed on, everyone's probably typed on a small, tiny screen, you mistype words and things like that all the time. And it's just, if you have to fill out long forms or something like that, just a pain in the butt. Or if you have gloves on, let's say it's cold and it's winter, you're wearing your gloves and you want to use your phone. Well, you have to take off the glove and you're freezing your fingers and you're trying to use the phone. And then accessibility for maybe people who are visually impaired would be a good example of this, that they can just interface more with the phone using their voice. And like I said, it kind of sets in a foundation that's going to be expected. I think this is voice interfaces to mobile devices is going to be very, very big. And I think this is also a type of thing of a very good use case of large language model, or these new AI models that are coming out that seem magical. It's because they are trained on natural language processing, and having a voice interface that then can interface with a large language model. I think that is where those LMs will really start to shine, and we'll be able to really capitalize on them and use them for things that we can only dream of right now. And right now, like I said, we're just on that cusp of where this concept is becoming more of a reality. We're just right there, and we're gonna start seeing things from Apple if we haven't already. For Worldwide Developer Conference of 2025, possibly Apple Intelligence is going to be released. We're going to see a lot of things from them. We're seeing things from Google at this time, so we're seeing a lot that's going on. And so I'm hoping to use this as an opportunity to try to build and see if I can't create this on my own, and to see how it goes. And like I said, I'm trying to use this as kind of like a public dev log, or to show the world where I'm at, and to see if this is possible. Like right now, I'm just in the design phase, very high level. Been thinking about this for a while, and just kind of on this. But like I said, we're just on that cusp technologically, where this is going to solve that big. For me, it's point trying to basically enter things into a phone, and having a voice interface to enter things into the phone would be a major improvement. But there are some things that we have to consider when we deal in this, like large language models hallucinate and have problems, maybe misspell things. So we'll always need a human in the loop whenever we build something like this. So it doesn't just the LLM doesn't just spit nonsense out, that we can check it as a human. And make corrections to it too. So we're just, like I said, we're just starting this, and it's going to be an exciting journey of how we can take this technology and actually use it for something useful and not a gimmick. Which we see a lot of gimmicks out there and stuff. And given that we're kind of in a deflating or how this AI bubble that we've been in for a while, with all the hype, is going to kind of pop. We're starting to see that with like Builder.ai and going out of business and being caught hiring people, 700 engineers overseas, to or seeing issues with Duolingo and some other companies out there. It doesn't mean that these AI is a dead end. It means that the technology is going to set into place to something where it's going to be really used for things that are going to be very, very useful to the end user, and it's going to change the way we do things for sure. So I'm hoping that this gets I can build this out and do a demo of it. But if not, I at least will attempt it and see what I learned from my attempting it. See what I learned in my progress, and see what type of lessons I can take away from this. But thank you for being here, and hope you all have a wonderful day.